Here in the Combo Classroom for a little live bonus video to discuss some mathematics about calendars and some different thoughts in general about the shift of the calendar year. We have just entered the year that many, or the most common of the calendar systems on Earth currently, calls 2025. And I did make an episode about how that number is really special and unique in several cool ways, not just a singular list of facts that some people will share about it, but also an iterated way of getting to it that has some cool equations I came up with for the number of the current year. But in general, due to sort of landing in this new year relatively recently, a few days ago, I was thinking about how certain things are going to land on a calendar. And due to having these strange lopsided months where usually it's 30 or 31, sometimes 28 or 29, and the 30s and 31s are scattered in a sort of weird way, mixed with the fact that we have 7-day weeks, makes certain patterns not super obvious how they occur. Like if this month starts on a given weekday, what weekday will 3 months from them then start, or patterns like that. But we can use things like modular arithmetic to describe what the year is doing. The complexity of it kind of shows it's not an ideal calendar system, but being the calendar system we're stuck within, there is a way of turning it into a set of modular equations or modular congruences that tell us patterns about how things like weekdays evolve throughout the year. And this can actually be notable to note when a certain day lands on a weekend. Like you can imagine on the really big scale, there's going to be a 1 in 7 chance on the super big scale of many, many, many years. We'll get closer and closer to a 1 in 7 chance that your birthday, for example, lands on any given weekday. Like maybe you want your birthday to land on Saturday. Well, within your lifetime, it will be a bit lopsided, and it won't be every 7th exactly, but that's what it'll get closer to. But what about traits like within a given year, the chance that some day of a given number in one of the months has that number land on a particular weekday? For example, the trope culturally of Friday the 13th. Now, let me pull open a calendar anyway to complement this point a bit. Here is our new calendar for the year, and it's sort of neat to look at the beginning of the year and be like, okay, here we. Here, wait, let me just resize all this, get it better for the whole stream. And looking at here, we can see things from the beginning of the year. You could look from the beginning of the end of the last year, or at any point in the last year based on some traits and figure this out for this year. But you don't usually do that. So at the beginning of this year, it's a good time to look like, okay, which particular holidays or whatever that matter to me are landing on a weekend or landing on a particular day of the week that has some effect in your life. Some people, the weekend is a more typical thing culturally where you work something like Monday through Friday or go to school those days or something, and then Saturday and Sunday are more of a free time day or something. And maybe it's better for you if your birthday, for example, lands on there. But what about, like I said, something like Friday the 13th, which doesn't require a given month's 13 to be the Friday? It just says, will there be some month that has a Friday the 13th? And that was one of the main things I wanted to investigate here, was I've heard that every year does have a Friday the 13th. So why don't we modularly prove that? Now, do I have a whiteboard marker here? I don't. Maybe I'll just pull open a little note-taking thing here. It's going to be a little easier digitally next to the calendar anyway, compared to going back and forth from the real whiteboard and this. And so I'm going to pull open a little thing here. And this is the type of stream I sometimes do where I sort of have a topic in mind. It could have been a bonus video, but I'm doing it in the form of a stream for the first like half hour. So if you have any comments or thoughts or any questions or whatever, I will check those, and the second half of this stream will involve looking at comments and stuff. But first, I'm getting through the sort of bonus video portion of this. Now, let's pull open a little note thing here and note that, okay, for a given month, we could say things are congruent to, and it's normally like a triple bar equal sign, but let's make this bigger. But we'll just do the approximately equal to thing here. I don't have a triple bar equal sign easily accessible here. Let's say it's congruent to 0 for a given month if that month starts on a Sunday. And we can sort of quickly see for the given example of Friday the 13th, which is our first example, that if we are congruent to this, we're going to have a Friday the 13th. Within a given month, if you start on a Sunday, the 13th of you will land on a Friday. There's no glitches, you could say, in that part of the cycle. There are glitches with things like which months have 30 versus 31 versus the extra glitch of February. Now, let's note that there overall are sort of 14 types of year in terms of weekdays. There are, for January, the ones that are congruent to 0. The ones we'll say congruent to 1, we're going to say means starts on Monday, and etc. And then we have the trait of is it or isn't it a leap year? So based on if your calendar doesn't need to say anything about current events, and your calendar just needs to say accurately which weekday lands on which number for each month, you could have 14 calendars and never need a new one. You could recycle a set of 14 calendars and be good. And 7 of them would be more common. It would be 7 calendars for the non-leap years times a shifted version of each of those for the leap years. So the way that we can see throughout a whole year whether certain things line up is let's look at patterns for given months based on, for whatever they start on. Like, we're just going to say that, let's say January is congruent to N. We don't know which one it is. Well, based on January's congruence, can we then say what February will have to have? And we can't, because January has 31 days, and so February will always land 4 days. Is it 4 days or 3 days? We'll land 3 days, because it's the remainder after 28 is an even amount of weeks. So 28 plus 3 is how many days we have. And so here we could see, for example, January, if it begins on a Wednesday, like this year happened to, then February will begin on a Saturday. And so note that 31-day months cause a shift. And first, let's just take that as a more general note, that we could say 31-day months that are congruent to M cause the next month to be congruent to M plus 3. And so here, for example, let's fill in the rest of these. Starts on Friday and starts on Saturday. So if we're trying to prove that every month has a given one of, or that some month of the year has a certain number land on a certain weekday, we're trying to say that for any of these 7 possibilities for what January is, we're guaranteed to have all of these congruence classes represented. And so here we noted that January to February, because January was a 31-day month, caused the next one to begin 3 days later. And similarly, we could say that 30-day months cause it to be 2 days later. So now let's backtrack a bit, because then we can go looking at this pattern. What does that mean for 29 and 28? Each of those cause one less amount. And when February is 28 days, for example, February will cause March to begin on the same day as itself. And that happened this year because it's not a leap year. Now, fun fact, leap years, everyone just says it's every 4 years. It's not quite. They skip it every 100. And then they re-add it. They skip it. It's every 4 years except every 100. Except for the exception, they still do it on some of the 100s. And so it's not an exact ratio. And so it's about 365.24 is pretty close to how many days are in a year. And that's because we're measuring different cycles. We're trying to make the sun, maybe some cultures have months line up with the moon, but you couldn't have them exactly line up because I would have to guess an irrational number, or if not, a really weird fraction of the ratio between the months of the lunar months and solar years. And those change as well. Like, they actually don't know currently when they're going to need the next leap second if they want the calendar to be accurate, or at least they don't know the full schedule, because these rates change. They're approximations and they're evolving. Like, the Earth might go faster one year by an ever so slight amount than the last year. So, in any case, for now at least, it's about 365.24 days in a year, causing the ratio to be mostly that 3/4 of the time we're on a non-leap year, and 1/4 of the time we add a day, but not exactly. And as I went over in my last live stream, some calendars have things like leap months that cause interesting things. Now, if anyone's interested in calendar math, also make sure you check out, if you haven't seen at some point, look up my older episode on my combo class channel about the calendar that has 13 Friday the 13ths every year. It's called the International Fixed Calendar, and I wish we were going on it. It's a cool calendar. So, anyway, here on this calendar, we have sort of gotten most of the info we would need to deduce certain things. Now, to check if, say, there's always going to be a Friday the 13th, first we can look at the sector just starting from March, because the calendar from March through December only has 7 options. The 14 options only apply to how it would change from the January through beginning of March bit, because February is the weird one. They should have put the weird one at the end or something. It would make all of this neater. So we can quickly note that March, let's say actually for our random starting point that we're doing March for now, is congruent to some n. And so March is a 31-day month, and always no leap days or anything like that in March. And so April is always going to be 3 more than that. So in this case, we can see what that resulted in the 3 more is Saturday to Tuesday. And so April is always going to be congruent to n plus 3 if we called whatever March is n. Now we can take this further. From April to May, that was a 30-day one, so we add 2 to that. So May, compared to March there, is going to be congruent to n plus 5. Now we can go further. May was a 31-day month. And a way you can remember that, by the way, is if you line up your knuckles, it's like the bumps are the ones that are 31. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. And you have to go bump to bump at this point. July, August, September, October, November, December. So that's the easiest way to do it. Not a song, because they have songs about it that always are guaranteed to trick you. It's the songs that work with, you don't want a mnemonic device that works just as easily with another wrong thing substituted in. And so I've heard these songs as a kid that are like 30 days has September, April, June, and November. But a lot of months rhyme with ember. So how are you supposed to know that it's November and not like December? Because December would rhyme and sound just as good in the rhyme. And so it's a bad mnemonic device if the wrong thing, it sounds like it could be the right one just as much. Anyway, May was a 31-day month, so that's going to add 3. And now we're going to do something interesting, because when we add 3, we're not going to go to n plus 8. N plus 8 in mod 7 is the same as n plus 1. If we add 8 days, it's the same as adding 1 day. And so modularly, we can shrink that number, the result being n plus 8, but write it as its congruence class that's simpler. And now we're going to continue this process, and we can see that now that we've looped around, what we're kind of looking for is, are all of the values going to appear? There's only 7 possible values. We've already hit 4 of them. Now, June adds 2 days because it's 30. So then July is similar to one we've seen before. So this doesn't get us a new one. And this is sort of interesting. What this tells us is that July always starts in the same day April starts in. I never knew that. I never thought about that. A lot of these things are like very observable and you could say simple, but I've never thought about them, and that makes them interesting to be this simple thing that's hidden right there. Like April's start in the same day as July's. Who knew? And now we have August. So from June to July, we added 2. From July to August, we add 3. And then we add 3 again from August to September. That one gives us plus 6, and then adding 3 more would be 9, but that crunches down to 2 because we're in mod 7. And then from September, that was a 30-day one, so October has plus 2. And do we have them all? Yeah, because this is n plus 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 is the same as 0. So what does this tell us? Between the beginning of March and the end of October, there will always be a Friday the 13th. That's another one that, like, I never thought about that or knew that, but seems like that's what the math lines right up with. And to double check, we can see, okay, October, does that start in, well, we could double check with any of them really compared, but let's say, is October one day of the week before May? May is a Thursday. October is a Wednesday. Yep. So that shows us the pattern that any day up to the 30th, there are weird things before that. But if our day we're looking for is up to the 30th of the month, there will always be the number getting any of the weekdays that you were looking for somewhere in this range. Now, what about the 31st? That throws things off a bit. Like, if we were wondering, does every year have the 31st be a Tuesday on some month? Well, there's not as many 31sts throughout the year. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's only 7 31sts. So we're only going to get a 31st lineup with every day if those all were different. And that definitely couldn't be the case on both leap years and non-leap years. And so that is a further extension that maybe we'll look at in a moment, is that the 31st will not always have the trait that 1 through 30 have, that whatever weekday you wanted it to be, some month of that year, of every year, some month will have the given weekday on the given number. 31st is a bit trickier, so while I chat for a moment, let me know if any of you can figure out if what the pattern is. How would you describe the pattern of from the beginning of the year and the fact of whether it is or isn't a leap year and what January starts in? How would you determine which 31sts will line up with which weekdays or not? All right, and let's see. I'll slide this over for a sec. Oh, no, now we have a big one and a small one. But I wanted to just make it more visible for a second. I'm going to look, or no, wait, this is going to complicate things when I pull open the chat. So, looking at our chat, hello to everyone here. And we have comments about the calendar was 13-month years. There are different times in history. Many calendar systems have been used. And I think in the future it should go back to 13-month calendars. And somebody notes they hate when the month starts on Friday or Saturday, so it takes up 6 separate weeks. For example, March or August. Yeah, that's sort of weird when here we have 6 different lines required there because however you divide the weeks, there's a way of dividing them where it's 6 different ones. So, for example, in August. And I need to run real quick and check something over there related to some noise and whether I might want to relocate the stream real quick and just grab some water real quick. But leave any thoughts or comments about the calendar portion or what you think about 31sts. I'll be back very shortly to continue some calendar-related thoughts. All right, folks, I'm back. So, thank you to everyone joining me in our first live stream of the year. Maybe we'll come back to the 31st thing in a bit, but for now, that will be a homework assignment. Think of if you can figure out how you would describe the pattern of which weekdays get 31sts. And remember, there are 14 types of year in terms of these questions. The 7 options that January could begin in, mixed with whether there's leap years or not. And sometimes you can find a given thing you're looking for just from March onward, making it easier, because then there's just 7 of that part. So, you know how I said that you could take 14 calendars and recycle them, and every year have one of the calendars that matched it? You could also have 7 or 14 sections, or let's see, you could have 7 calendars and then 7 variations of just the first 2 months that you substituted with the other first 2 months sometimes. That would be probably more complicated than just having 14 calendars. Or probably more complicated than just buying a new calendar. Anyway, at this point, I want to take a moment as well to share some thoughts about our year's shift. If anyone does leave the live stream early, remember to, at some point, check out the new main episode I made about the number 2025. That's linked, I think I linked it in the description. Anyway, at the beginning of the year, it's the start of a new type of cycle. And while I already picked a different structure of how I do my cycles in this classroom, are grades, and we're in grade -3, and those don't line up exactly with calendar years, I decided I'm going to be more in charge of when it's called a reset than the calendar would let me. And still, it's nice to have, say, some resolutions or some thoughts related to the past year and the next year. Use it as an excuse or opportunity to make yourself or let yourself think about some of these things, like what are some goals I have for the year? What are some habits I would like to keep or lose this year or build? Or maybe some skills you want to build over the year. What are some thoughts about the past year? Things that you enjoyed or things that you think you could have done better? And as first, I'll note about the upcoming year. I don't want to mention as much about that because it can be more fun to under describe my videos and then just release the video related to cool ideas I have. So I have a lot of cool ideas for this year, but I don't want to say exactly what topics they are because it can be more exciting just for them to show up when they're ready and not have too many spoilers or whatever. And so there will be many topics. Right now, I've been extra focused on getting episodes out on my main combo class channel, and that just passed 50,000 subscribers, which is less than here, but here had the boost of the shorts algorithm, and that one's just my main longer episodes you have to choose to click on. And so I'm still very excited, even though that one looks slower than this one, and this is my bonus channel. I'm very excited that my main channel is halfway to another 6-digit number. And Combo Class in general has only been released for about 2.5 years, so this is doing better than I had expected at first. Not in terms of whether it would end up doing well, but that sort of right away I have managed to start growing our nice community and things. And speaking of which, there is a Discord and such of cool combo lords chatting and things. Now, about the upcoming year, one thing that I want to add to Combo Class that will be incorporated more into videos will be music. And so there's going to be some music theory lessons, which I actually know a lot about. I used to be a music teacher. And so there will be on the main Combo Class channel, and then bonus extensions on this channel, some guides to things like piano chords and the circle of fifths, and some of those types of episode I will start to put out this year. And over the course of the next grade or two, there are a lot of music-related lessons that I have planned to do, spread out throughout other topics, and also some music I want to release. So I have a lot of music that I've been making that I will show you folks as well, that is music to listen to, as opposed to learn lecture about how to make music. I want to do both of those things. I've also released many like albums and different types of musical projects in the past, and then I took a long break from that while I got Combo Class launching, and now it's ready or time to start reincorporating the more musical side of the art I like to make. And I do already make the soundtracks for my main Combo Class episodes. So if you want a hint of some aspects of how I put together music in a soundtracky sense, you can listen to the background of one of those episodes up close. And I also, at a few points in the past, have done a few live streams that were like how to make a digital beat, and I'll do more of those at some point, as well as other live streams that make sense as the way of conveying some music teaching. So that will be a fun thing to jump into. And also another thing we're going to go deeper into this year is analysis of games, which will be very mathematical and still teach you a lot, whether or not you care about each given game or puzzle I'll be analyzing. But games and puzzles will be an aspect continuing throughout this year. And of course, there will be many classic number theory topics of things I think are underrated about numbers in some way. and other sorts of thing like that and sorts. And 1 second. Sorry, just had to grab some water. And anyway, now some thoughts about the previous year. Now, I'm not going to fully go into all this right now because some of this makes sense to dedicate a particular bonus video or live stream or something to. But over the past year, I achieved many good things, put out many types of project I loved, but also had a lot of hard times in my life. And I've hinted at some of those in some things like the grade -2 finale. And I will note that, here, I got to do a calculation right here real quick while I mention this. And so I will note that one thing that some of my closer viewers heard in a later portion of one of the less viewed episodes I've put out, which was sort of the grade -2 documentary finale type thing, like at the end of the grades, I like to put a documentary-ish look at them. And those are some of the more personal episodes I've released so far, or personal videos of any form. And one thing I went into in one of those is, I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but in the past, several years ago, I had a problem with alcohol, with drinking too much. And then I took a long time where I wasn't drinking at all, including the whole beginning of making Combo Class. And then during parts of grade -2 of Combo Class, as I've only mentioned once or twice before, I stupidly let myself try to start drinking again, thinking I could do it in a really moderated way. And I'm not the right person to do that, and it is a particular substance that my body still had an issue with starting to go back into my old habits of drinking too much. And while I don't think it negatively affected a lot of the output I did, there was a lot of output I did in between that still came out how I wanted it to be. It slowed down things a little bit in terms of how much output I was putting out, and it also just was harder in my personal life and in my brain and things like that. However, I did quit that a while ago, and the calculation I'm doing right now deduces that I have not drank in 123 days, which is a nice amount. 1, 2, 3. So, there's that. It's been 123 days. So I plan on continuing that. So I, for a while when I started Combo Class, I was just someone who doesn't drink at all. Even when I'm at parties and stuff, even like at New Year's, I was at a big party. And then, for a minute, I was like, maybe I can be someone who only does it once in a while. It doesn't work for me. So now I'm back someone who just doesn't do that. And while it's not, always easy when you're at a party or whatever, it is doable. So if anyone is in a similar boat, I'm sure you can do it. Because here I am after, more than 123 days again. And already I can feel more productive than I was back then, and just a little mentally better. And things are not perfect in my brain or my life, but that does make a big difference. So that's a personal thought about the past year. However, there was a lot of good about the past year. I had a lot of good times with my friends, a lot of good times out in nature, and of course a lot of fun filming the Combo Class episodes and bonus videos I made, including some projects of new types that I haven't done before. Like, for the first time, I released video projects that were edited over an hour long for the first time in my life. And I've had many channels before in my life, many video projects I've made and edited, but last year was the first time I ever released anything that was over an hour, which happened a couple times. One that was like a game analysis episode, and then one that was this pattern about numbers I discovered. I'm not counting live streams for that, because it's very different to rant for 3 hours or to make an edited project that ends up being longer than that. Now, those are just some random thoughts about the last year and the upcoming year. And to check with some of our comments, we have some recommendations to make a video about billiards That does sound interesting. The physics of different things about how billiards would go. Certainly a possibility that we could analyze those or use them in general as an example for something or another we'll be talking about. And another person was wondering what instruments. Instruments I'll be teaching are piano, guitar, other similar stringed instruments to guitar like bass and ukulele, and digital beat making, and things related to lyrics, like not necessarily how to sing with a good tone. I don't really know how to teach that, but like how to structure flow of lyrics, of rapping or singing, or how to use multisyllabic rhyming or things like that. So there's some things lyric related as well. And mostly it's going to begin with piano as well as digital beat making. But a lot of those episodes I'll also have a hint of stringed instruments like guitar. And then they'll get a deeper focus at some point. Maybe by then I will know more instruments myself and want to teach more stuff as well. But those are the ones I currently know well enough to feel comfortable teaching. So, those were some of my thoughts about the past year and the upcoming year. And let's see an example this year of a little more math that I had of that last remaining question, which was related to when the 31s get particular weekdays or not. And let's just see an example here of how that works. This year, we have a 31 on a Monday first at March, and then that makes another one Saturday, Thursday, Sunday. So that's Monday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday. So Monday, Thursday through Sunday, and Wednesday through Sunday. But I don't think we have a Tuesday. So there's a missing Tuesday 31st this year. And since that happens in the string from March through December, to not have a missing Tuesday, you'd need it in January or February on your leap year shift. But that wouldn't mean now they would have to be really close. February never has a 31. January was a Friday, so leap day would not shift it in comparison to March here far enough to make it a Tuesday. So it looks like regardless of leap day or not, you'll be missing a particular weekday that won't get a 31 each year. But yeah, comment if you can figure out a more detailed version of any of that. And I think I am going to wrap up pretty soon. That was mostly sort of like a bonus video-esque thing I wanted to do live, which was talking about how weekdays land on calendars. There's other cool patterns you can do related to like little tricks of do this with the weekday and you'll end up on this other weekday. And those relate to patterns in Mod 7. So if you're bored, I recommend looking at what happens in the Mod 7, like multiplication table or exponentiation table or addition or stuff like that, and see what would happen if you turned some of these into facts about days of the week. Saying, for example, if we call congruent to 0 the day that you start on, or some random arbitrary day, and congruent to 2, whichever day is 2 past that. So, a lot of interesting things to look at there. But for now, I hope you're all having a really good start of your year, or at least are excited about some aspects of the upcoming year. I know I have a lot of cool things planned, and I'm not going to reveal many of them. There's other things that I do already have planned that are just going to be better if they don't have a spoiler before. So stay tuned for a lot of cool bonus stuff. There will be another really cool episode about prime numbers and a very interesting subtopic of them coming out on the main Combo Class channel in about a week. And until then, some random bonus stuff on here. But thanks to any of you who joined me for this little bonus video. Love all of you. Oh, good timing to wrap it up. There's sirens. They're coming for my clocks. Nope, that's definitely not for me, but